All right, I think we're live. It's good to be here, Nelly. I'll
Yes.
let you take it away.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, JK, and the whole Stakefish team for organizing this session with us. Africa is well represented. I see my friends from Nigeria, from Senegal, from Ivory Coast, from Cameroon. So welcome, guys. Welcome, girls. Today, when Daniel first approached me about this session, it was really much more than just having a session on how to set up a baker, how to run a baker. Running a baker, especially a Tezos baker in Africa, means participating in the decentralization and contributing to this kind of financial or crypto revolution that we all read about, but we need Africa to really be at the table and fully participate in that governance model. So in that spirit, we're gonna have JK that presents everything about business and operations, followed by Daniel on protocol and governance. And hopefully, we're going to also cover some infrastructure challenges and how to solve them. And we will end this session with the Q&A. You all fill the document with all your questions, and Daniel and JK will go through them and address them as best as possible. So I guess it's up to you, Daniel and JK. I leave you the floor. Thank you.
So, welcome everyone. Thank you guys for joining. We're Stakefish. I lead business and strategy here at Stakefish. We are one of the. We aren't the earliest, but we are one of the longer running, I think, bakers on Tezos, and we've been around this space for quite a while, around the validator space. And Tezos is one of the first few networks that we supported from early on, and we're extremely passionate about making sure that while we support the protocols as a validator, we also want to make sure that the protocols are healthy and decentralized. And we think this is one of the efforts of doing so. Definitely, we want to have a more geographically well represented set of bakers on Tezos, because that really means resiliency for the network and also contributes to the decentralization of Tezos. So I think this today's going to be in two parts, and I'm mostly going to be talking about a bit about how to sort of frame the business of staking as a service. And then I'll try to also go into potentially how you could sort of approach on how to launch a validator service for yourself. So yeah, so this is just a short intro of me. So just a very short TLDR of why I came to a blockchain is because I worked in antitrust related data analytics related work before my entry into crypto. But I definitely felt like there needed to be an alternative system to the existing industries. That's why I became really passionate about decentralization and about what the decentralized ecosystem could enable. We see tech giants these days almost having a monopoly around some of the key technical products out there, and it'd be good if we had some sort of alternative, some sort of competition against them. And I think really decentralization is one of the ways we could get we could actually contribute to the world on trying to compete against these systems. And now I'm trying to figure out how to build out the validator and staking ecosystem, which arguably is like the most first base layer to building out the decentralized future. And this is just my Twitter handle and my email, just in case you'll need to reach out to me after this presentation. So I think just to go into the business of staking, it's very important just to really just touch on, first of all, how big exactly is staking in the first place. And, it's gaining a ton of traction already. Right now, I think there's around $118 billion worth of assets that are being actively staked today. And of course, Tezos contributing to that number as well. But I wanted to highlight that the proof of stake ecosystem is consistently growing. A lot of blockchains are more and more adopting proof of stake. And so we'll see consistently this entire staking ecosystem, the attention to the staking ecosystem growing as the years pass by. One thing to note is that it's almost close to impossible to launch a proof of work blockchain these days. And so a lot of the new protocols will likely be consistently adopting proof of stake. And Now, going into sort of how to think about validators, I think I try to divide it into two parts of what a validator means. And the first of it is that a validator, at its core essence, is there to support the protocols. The validators are actually the ones running the nodes that actually secure the blockchain, and this is the one side that we need to consider as validators. And so some key sort of roles that I like to really come back to think about consistently are, we need to make sure that as a validator we're consistently running the protocol seamlessly. That's definitely what the blockchain teams would want us to do. That's what the protocols would want us to do. We need to also actively participate in governance. This is definitely a big one in Tezos, obviously, and also we should be building out tools and the community there. And I think Daniel will talk a bit more about participation in governance and building out tools and community later. But I just want to highlight, like, these are the key bullet points when I think about how, as validators, we need to support Tezos and other protocols. And so, for the role that we serve, the compensation there is in three parts. First, there's grant programs, and this is definitely something that Tezos consistently does every quarter, where they do provide grants to really important projects. And I believe some of the validators, also even bakers, validators, qualify for these grant programs. And then another one is foundation delegations, and this is one that might not be as evident, but is done quite frequently, where foundations, they will agree to delegating their funds to really highly actively participating validators, and it's great for them because they're not really gifting any of their treasury. They're really just staking them. And it's, in a sense, they're staking them. They're not losing any of their money, but at the same time, they're also securing their own blockchain. So it's a net positive for them to act. It's a positive. It's a win-win situation for them if they do delegations. And so this is also something that I know that the Tezos Foundation is very open to doing. And then also there's incentivized testnets, but I don't think this really qualifies or really is relevant to Tezos at this point. But this is something that other protocols like to do. And so keeping that sort of this part in mind, this side of the market in mind, there's a few ways a validator could position. You could position yourself considering that. And I like to bucket them into three parts. And the first is protocol specialist, where you're really just focused on contributing to Tezos a lot. Like, this means like you're actually contributing to code base. You're actually actively participating in the governance by actually adding on some key protocol upgrades, and you can really narrowly focus down on trying to improving the protocol. Next is being a multi-protocol validator. This means that you're not only just running a validator on Tezos, but also you might be running validators on different networks. Now, the reason why this is really helpful is that you learn a ton by watching other protocols, how they function. You learn about like how they do upgrades, what sort of best practices they're adopting, and the way their community is actually growing. And as a validator, you're in a prime spot to actually learn that and try to bring that to other protocols that you care about. So in this case, like, if you think Tezos is the protocol you care about most, you could choose to still run validators on other networks and try to bring in some of these best practices into the Tezos ecosystem. And the final one is running a validator as a side project, and we're seeing this trend increasingly happen more and more, where you might be building a dApp, you might be building tools on Tezos, but you also choose to run a validator on the side. This is advantageous for two things. One, you anyways need to run a node, and so running a validator on top of running your own node is pretty easy to do. And second, you're also able to be on top of how the protocol itself is going to be evolving, and so you'd have a very good pulse of where the protocol is going, and you could adapt the tools, or the dApp you're building according to the future upgrades. Now, I've talked about one part of a validator where, the validator and the protocol relationship. Well, as validators, of course, we, otherwise known as staking service providers, there's the other part where, as validators, we're also helping holders to stake their Tezos, their coins. And I'd like to think about our role in that relationship in three parts. First, the most important thing is like we're trying to optimize staking rewards for users. This obviously a big factor into this is making sure that we do have the highest uptime, that we are making sure we're on top of endorsements, that we're making sure we're upgrading our validator consistently in tune so that users are not missing out on their staking rewards. These are some contributing factors to that bullet point. And then the next part is abstracting some of the complexities of staking. What this means is that not everyone is going to understand why there are some delays on snapshots, why some of the bakers might not be providing their rewards at certain dates. These are all concepts that might be natural to, I think, people who build Tezos itself, but it might not be as evident to some of the non-technically non-technically knowledgeable users who just really want to stake. And so trying to help stakers understand that is, I think, part of the job of a validator. And then finally, trying to mitigate the risk or involve of staking is also something as validators that is a responsibility. And this could mean either trying to make sure that the users are staked properly with their own keys, that they're making sure that they're not trying to send actual Tezos to wallets or exchanges. Trying to help them mitigate some of these risks are part of the responsibilities of a validator. And the compensation for validators for providing these services are obviously the commissions that we do charge to the stakers for the delegations that they do make to our validator. So I wanted to paint a picture of how the different profiles of validators existing in the market today. And I categorize them largely into three parts. The first being the exchanges and custodians. And these are obviously like Coinbase's, Kraken, Binance that choose to stake the customers' coins for them. And I believe right now, as an example on Tezos, right, Binance is the biggest baker there. And so this Binance would obviously fall into that category very well. And next up, there's like funds and whales. And funds and whales are either going to be crypto funds or funds that have invested during the ICO phase. And they just have a ton of coins that they really need to stake. And finally, it's going to be the community members. And I believe this is like the most important, I think, members when it comes to staking profiles. And they're people who really are passionate about Tezos. They're passionate about making sure they're passionate about trying to help secure the Tezos network. And so I really do value their contributions a lot. So I've come to like the final section. Like I obviously I'm not able to cover everything during this presentation, but we will get to I think a few questions later. You could definitely ask some questions on during the Q&A. But I did want to make sure that I fit in this section where I was trying to think about how I would approach creating my own validator if I were trying to create one today. And to be honest, it's very different from when we first created our own validator, which was 3 years ago. During those times, there weren't a lot of validators in the space, and we were, I think, one of the maybe 10 validators that existed in their entire world. But now it's a very different story. It's a lot more competitive. There's a lot more interest in parties, so it might be a bit challenging. But I did want to provide like how you could potentially approach running a validator baker today. So I don't think number one would be relevant if you really know you want to run a baker. Number one, I have added that if you wanted to just run a neutral sort of validator, you would definitely want to do some research into different protocols that you want to support. But in this case, if you know you're going to run a baker on Tezos, great. There's no need to go through step one. You could go right on to step two. And it's asking questions to other validators and the core team. I think asking questions to the core team is something that you could do to try to get a better understanding of the protocol itself. But obviously, when it comes to running your own Baker, you need to ask questions to other validators. And the great thing is that most validators are very helpful. Like us, like we try to be open about as many questions as possible. As long as like it doesn't compromise our security, like we're very much happy to try to be helpful as possible, because at the end of the day, having more healthy validators in the protocol is a positive moving forward. And we definitely want to see more stronger peers on Tezos. And then the third is trying to establish a reputation in the ecosystem. You should try to be an active member in the community, whether it be Telegram channels, whether it be Discord, whether it be like GitLab itself, the Tezos repo. Trying to offer help, I think, goes a long way, and it really helps build up your reputation bit by bit. This is really important because this is what will then put your name on the map. That's the way where the foundation, other validators, other community members know that you're here to actually help. You're here for the long run, and you really want to see Tezos succeed. And so trying to even build a bit of reputation, I think, is a very key part. And then finally, obviously, you'll need to think about fundraising, or you'll need to think about trying to bootstrap your Baker. And I think once you've established a reputation, that's when you could start going out, talking with other funds that might be looking to stake their Tezos. Or you could go directly to the foundations as well. You could try to talk with the Tezos Foundation, say, hey, you're trying to launch a Baker, and you have some goals in mind, and you want to seek out help. And your credentials from the previous step is going to go a long way during those discussions with the foundation. So this is sort of the steps I would be taking today if I were launching my own Baker. I hope this was helpful. There's definitely a ton of things I haven't covered right now, but I'll make sure to cover them during the Q&A. So looking forward to that section. With that being said, I'll hand it over to Daniel. Yeah.
Okay, mine up. So I'm Daniel. I work on protocols and governance at stakefish. And I'll be presenting on a bit of the work that I do, and then hopefully shedding some light on some of the governance stuff that we do as well, especially with Tezos. So protocols and governance. So just quickly about myself, I'll kind of give a description of like what protocol specialist that I do here. So we are basically ecosystem, like blockchain ecosystem experts, and like the protocol politicians of like the different POS networks that we support. So we cover work spanning understanding infrastructure level insights. So we work closely with like the infrastructure team, decentralization application metrics, and also decentralized application metrics of products built on top of networks, community interfacing, some market presence, the relationship building between the foundations and then the wider ecosystem, and obviously network governance. So just quickly about myself, I have a pretty diverse background. So just to clarify that, like the protocol research and protocol specialist work can be right from a variety of backgrounds for anyone that is interested in these types of roles. Entering into a validator, or also starting your own validator beyond like the infrastructure level stuff. So I studied everything from like biology to religion to computer science. And this is like a quick, I'll be providing this presentation later, but right, I had been kind of all over the place, right? And I started as a minor in 2013. I was pretty motivated by some of like the ideological values that cryptocurrency and blockchains had, specifically in contrast to the the traditional financial system. And so I'd done stuff right with remittances in Southeast Asia, decentralized exchanges, even worked on a few permissioned blockchain applications in the pharmaceutical supply chain industry, worked on some IEEE working groups, education, decentralized autonomous organizations, and some NFTs, as well as the climate initiatives that I can talk about later. But so I would say like there's like basically a few key kind of concepts that I kind of focus on as doing protocol specialist work at stakefish. So as I mentioned, we do work with foundations, other applications on, let's say, for example, Tezos, and the community, which is what we're doing right now. And so, right, establishing and maintaining and managing these relationships are important, especially in order to like provide coordination and synchronization for the rest of the community, so that the people kind of know what is going on, as well as kind of expands our presence to provide opportunities for delegation to ourselves and also to support and white label others. A second area of focus that I work on is like research. So this is design, conducting research on some of these ecosystems, as well as researching into some of the governance that is coming out of these networks. If someone is proposing like these protocol changes, or also providing any other research into the application level as well. So that's kind of stuff that I also focus on. A third one is delegator communication. So how we're able to communicate how we as a validator are voting on certain ways and why we are voting. And so I think that's probably one of the more important aspects of how a validator can communicate for their delegators is, delegators are providing their cryptocurrency to us as a validator and expecting us to kind of vote on their behalf. And so being able to communicate like why we're voting and which way we're voting is important, and gives also the more important opportunity for a delegator to see like, okay, is my cryptocurrency, is my stake being handled in an appropriate way? And if you obviously disagree with the way that we're voting, or a validator is voting that you delegated to, you should remove and then go find another validator. I think this area is probably a bit more neglected than most. I think Stakefish is definitely trying and leading a lot of efforts in this around here to make sure that delegator communication is ensured. And hopefully this can kind of be an example of that other people can kind of follow as well. So there's a few projects that we're working on to support delegator communication. So stay tuned. And then we obviously, if you ask, we can obviously share a lot of this stuff with you guys too. And fourth, governance, where we, as I mentioned in the research side, analyze the governance discussions for each of the blockchains. And then so in specific, like with Tezos, when a lot of this, the governance proposals come up in like the 5-stage process that Tezos has, we can kind of give our input in comments when these governance proposals are put onto the official Tezos forums, and as we move on to those stages. Another area that I work on is kind of reporting. So I work with people as well in like some of the marketing departments to kind of manage like the updates on these protocols. And so we do the same with updates on Tezos, and we just try to keep people updated. And then finally, this is like a special project section where we kind of identify gaps in different types of protocols and then see how we can kind of help support that. And so an example of this is kind of like the discussions that we've been having with Nelly for some opportunities that we can kind of help support in Tezos Africa. And so here are just some of the examples of like these special projects. So one is like this infrastructure carbon working group that I've been supporting to help figure out how to measure carbon offsets as a validator and blockchain infrastructure service provider, and figure out ways to offset it. A second one is this one, the Tezos Africa Geographic Validator Decentralization Initiative, to be able to provide some education, questions, relationship building, and most importantly, as JK had touched on in his presentation, being able to contribute and introduce more decentralization into the validator sets across the world. And those include, obviously, right, instead of having clusters of validators that are based in, let's say, Western Europe or Northeast America, we as, let's say, the Tezos ecosystem needs to explicitly have strategic positioning of these validator nodes in different parts of the world, so that we don't kind of suffer from centralization risks. And what I mean by centralization risks is like all the validators kind of using the same cloud service providers and being at risk for a cloud service provider kind of dominating and controlling certain actions that we might not want. We as the Tezos ecosystem might not want, and as validators might not want. Another example is like the validator forum. So, right, people who are validators and also protocol specialists within them can be able to communicate valuable information around governance and also infrastructure related developments. And so this is important in that, right, information should be shared between validators and the network itself where necessary. And so a key concept here is that as stakefish is a validator on many networks, we can say that inter-network, between networks, the validators that are pretty much can kind of cooperate and can share information, versus validators within networks, intra-network, are inherently at competition with each other. But then it is important that key infrastructure insights and information that can help make certain services more efficient, it's important that we share those. And so some of that is what I've been working on at the Validator Forum. And then finally, something that I've also been kind of understanding that is important and attempting to make some progress on is some of this like governance draft proposal standardization. And this is more inter-network, where on many different protocols, you have a variety of different governance draft proposal submission forms, and they're all kind of look different. And so standardization there would be key in making sure that everyone knows what to expect when they see a governance proposal, and then can quickly and efficiently parse it and then be able to understand what they need to do with that. So these are just like some examples of some of these special projects that we can do. I would say, just to leave off here, is right, I think the impact that the role that validators can play on these specific protocol research related issues, and specifically the role that validators can play in governance to the network that they are maintaining, is right. They're not just maintaining it, but then they're also providing guidance to it as well. And regardless of like the power that a validator has, having a say and a voice for the direction of the protocol, I think should be a valuable asset to have. And so, right, keeping a finger on the discussions, and so obviously within the Tezos ecosystem, keeping a finger on the updates, some of the infrastructure development teams, as well as kind of contributions that and ideas that you guys can have as validators are extremely important. And I think as networks, let's say like Tezos and other blockchain networks like Ethereum, Solana, Cosmos, Polkadot, as they begin to expand and realize the importance of not just cloud service provider decentralization, but also geographic decentralization, especially how different validators can kind of be strategically placed in different parts of the world. I think like those types of voices become much more important. And I think that, right, what we have here in Tezos Africa is extremely important as well. So yeah, I find it quite meaningful and impactful.